Hello.
Hi.
Hi. Heather's intro there was a lot less kind of misogynistic newsreader. Um, yeah, we're just Fran and Heather today. We're not joined by Greer. Because Heather, do you want to tell the people at home why we're not joined by Greer?
She does not understand the joys of Supernatural.
No, she doesn't. Amazingly, given the fact that she is a fan of almost everything else. And I'm sure she would be a fan of Supernatural. She hasn't embraced it as of yet.
I'm sure
So
we can fix that.
for those of you that don't know, Supernatural is a show about two brothers whose mother is killed by some unknown force when they're small children. They then are brought up by their father to hunt demons, and it's about their relationship with each other and the people and the various monsters and forces that they encounter and their attempts to lead some semblance of a normal life. Heather, I sent you a list of discussion topics quite some time ago. I can't remember exactly what was on there, but you've got it in front of you. So whatever you'd like to start with, I'm happy to dive in.
Well, I do find the accusations of misogyny, just in general with the show, quite interesting. It's not something that I had heard until you put the list together, but I
Hmm.
did see a video of Misha Collins discussing it, and it is a valid argument against the show. It's very, very male centric. And pretty much any time they bring in a female character, particularly one that can be seen as a romantic interest for Sam or Dean, they kind of
Hmm.
get the axe pretty quick.
Yeah, or Castiel. I mean, Meg got the
Yeah.
axe. Spoiler. Though this will be spoiler heavy, by the way.
Yeah.
I agree. I mean, I don't think there's any getting round. I don't think there's any excusing the fact that the show is just rife with misogyny. I mean, not only do I mean the killing off of the love interests. I think it seems to be because it gets in the way of the most interesting relationships on the show, which are the relationships between Sam, Dean, and later Castiel, Bobby. Um, and yeah, but I think for me, the other really big problem is that compared to the male characters that are all kind of they're funny, they're three-dimensional, they're imperfect in the way that people are, they and they're given kind of stories in their own right that are kind of interesting and take them in new directions, and the women don't have anything resembling that. They're either kind of highly strung fangirl nerd characters. I can think of one in particular. Not Charlie. I think Charlie's great. Felicia Day.
Oh yeah.
Although she was a far later addition to the show. Or they're just sort of they're attractive, and yeah, they're attractive.
The
I can't
female
really.
characters, it's just I can't even think of that much to describe them because you're right. They're not as well written as the male characters are. I mean, Charlie is a decent exception, and so far she has survived the seasons
She
that
has.
she's been on. But
I mean, Charlie.
Misha, Misha made the point that she's not a romantic um like
Threat.
issue for the guys because she's gay. So I think that's a fair point with why she might have lived for what I think she's been on. She's going to be on the third season. So she
Yeah,
started in 7 and she's going to be in season 9.
I think she's been on it. I think she's been on it three times now. I think she was on twice last season. Um,
Mm.
and and she is so this will be her fourth time in season 9, and she is an interesting character, in that she's funny and quirky, and has quite a strong comics personality, which again none of the female characters are funny,
Yeah.
which is a pretty big kind of oversight considering the fact that all the male characters on the show have some kind of comedic voice. Either just they are naturally funny people, or there's some funny personality trait. Um, that, it's just something that I think the problem is that they seem to write the female characters in a way that makes you not warm to them. And
Mm-hmm.
I think the thing is a romantic interest getting in the way of Sam and Dean's relationship wouldn't matter to audiences if the women were well written. The reason why the fans didn't like it when Dean had a long-term relationship with I can't remember her name, Lisa,
Yeah.
and her son, was because Lisa was a non-character.
Yeah. She was pretty bland.
Yeah, she was, and I mean, and things like them using bitch on the show, things like them killing all the women. I mean, it's just some of it goes beyond just the women being bland into, or almost quite misogynistic territory. Like things like Dean reading sexy Asian babes or something of that description.
Yeah.
I think the thing is that what do you think, Heather? Do you think that because I'm of the opinion that just because you show a character behaving in a certain way or you show things in a TV show, it doesn't necessarily mean that the show itself or the people that make the show are advocating those things.
Oh, no, I don't think so. It depends really on like if it's like a pervasive underlying thing that's clearly written into like every character on the show, then it would be a problem with the creators and the writers. But I think if it's just like, Dean being into Asian porn and something like that, doesn't necessarily mean that the writers themselves are misogynistic, though in this case, there are more indicators saying that they might be.
It does seem to be the case, and it's weird because the show has a female showrunner now, and which obviously it didn't at the beginning. It was Eric Kripke. It's now Sarah Gamble, I believe it's pronounced, and it I can remember it was either Misha Collins or Jensen Ackles telling this story, that apparently there was a bit of dialogue between them when Castiel came back. Dean had his overcoat, his trench coat, and there was a bit of dialogue between them that made the actors really, really uncomfortable, because it was, I think, in Jensen Ackles, I think in his words, it was a bit kind of gay, and I do think Jensen Ackles himself has made it pretty clear that he's somewhat uncomfortable with the idea of him and Castiel's relationship. So I think the show in general seems to have. It's not only that it's male centric; it's that it sort of celebrates being masculine, and if you're not masculine, you are sort of dismissed.
Yeah, it seems fairly masculine and heteronormative. So,
it is.
Like, I know a lot of particularly fangirls for the show, are very into I don't know how to pronounce it, Dean Steele or, Dean and Cass.
Dean and Cass, Dean Steele.
And I just don't see that. Despite there being, underlying, you could very easily read gay undertones in their relationship. I don't see the creators going that way because I think they'd be too afraid of alienating their straight male fans that they wouldn't even think of doing it.
It's true, and you could almost forgive them for that because, the show has such an enormous fan base and they would have so much to lose, except for the fact that you look at a show like Buffy, which, due to the lead character being, beyond just being a great three-dimensional character, she was also, a beautiful young woman. And, they could have alienated their fan base by going down the gay route and being so, accepting, so unstereotypical in their writing of two gay women. And they did it anyway, and this was 10 years ago. And I think what disappoints me, and again, it wasn't something that I had noticed, but somebody made a very interesting point that they have quite clearly written in allusions to the relationship between Dean and Castiel. And considering what a big fan base in the gay community the show has, and the show does have a massive fan base in the gay community, it almost seems like something to placate them to keep them watching, to keep them hoping. Because a relationship, I mean, that sounds trite, to keep them hoping, but because a relationship between two quite masculine male characters, um, developing out of nowhere, or not developing out of nowhere, but developing in an unexpected way on a big mainstream show like Supernatural would be a real step forward and would be a really great thing for the gay community to see. It seems like they're keeping them on a thread without ever really intending to deliver, and that does make me quite angry.
Yeah, I'm sure it can be very frustrating if you're, if you are gay and you're like, I'd like, particularly I think with gay men in such a kind of butch basis for a show where you're going out and hunting supernatural beings, it would be really cool to have a lead character be a gay man. I mean, they've had a few, particularly, I can think of Charlie, and I can think of one episode where they went to that supernatural convention, like they're in, based on the books that are supposed to be in universe, and they had the two guys that dressed up, that cosplay as Sam and Dean, and they're actually in a relationship, and I thought that was cute. But
yeah,
I can't think of any gay male characters that besides those two.
I mean, the only other example I can think of is there's an episode called Ghost Faces, for those of you that don't know, which is basically it's these two guys, Ed and Harry, that are kind of, they're the show's kind of standard nerd characters, a bit like Andrew, Warren and Jonathan in Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and they try and film a pilot for a kind of a Most Haunted style show. And they have an intern with them called Corbett, who has a very obvious crush on one of them. And he ends up dying. And he's a lovely character and he's very sweet. It's a lovely performance. But again, he's very much a straight man's idea of a gay character. He's very, he's very kind of reticent, and very unmasculine. And it's played for laughs and it is endearing, but I as a gay character, I would very quickly get tired of seeing those stereotypes.
Yeah. On top of the fact that they, kill him off shortly after introducing him.
Because he was actually a character that had some potential to go interesting places. And I was hoping that there would be some kind of resolution to their relationship, but they never bring him back. They never mention him again, and they are, for anyone that knows Supernatural, they are more than within their abilities to bring people back from the dead.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, that is not an issue for them. I mean, really, I think what is interesting is that we've been talking about this for a while now. For anyone that doesn't know the show, they're going to be seriously put off by this. So I think we should talk about some of the good things.
Yes.
So, Heather, what's on the list?
Let's see. We have, number one would be Sam and Dean's relationship, which is well written. It's complex.
I agree.
And
you have a school bus going by, don't you?
Airplane this time.
Airplane. Oh, exciting. Yeah, I agree. I think it is a complex relationship, and what I really like about it is that there is genuine conflict. You do sometimes think, are they going to be able to patch it up this time? And not in that TV sweeps week drama kind of way. It's like they have a fight and they leave it on a cliffhanger. They have real unresolved underlying tension about, decisions they've made, because they are dealing every day with life and death, and they are going to make the wrong decisions sometimes. And there have been times when one of them has been dead, or they've been apart, or they've been alone. And I mean, Sam, for instance, and this, will eventually lead nicely into, what the hell the deal with Sam's character is that, he's done some things that could be construed as very selfish or very reckless, and you know, because he, again, this is a massive spoiler, because he has demon blood in him, there is that underlying tension with whether Dean really ultimately trusts him. Um, but they always find their way back together, and what's really interesting about it, and what I think is really brave about it, is that you believe that it's 90%, brotherly, kind of affection and love and a desire to take care of each other, but then also kind of a good 10% of them just being afraid of being without each other. And I do think that's quite brave, that they are not afraid to go down that route, because it's not always a comfortable thing to watch.
No.
I mean, what would be your kind of thoughts on that, Heather?
I agree with that, particularly that they have the underlying "what the hell would I do without the other." Particularly in the cases when they die and one of them is left without the other, there's usually, except for the latest one where, for the end of, I think it was season 7.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah, Dean going to purgatory, and Sam just kind of, for once, moves on with his life and doesn't focus on how am I bringing Dean back. And then when Dean actually does, of his own accord, come back, he's angry that Sam didn't drop everything and go looking for him, figuring out how to get him back.
It's an interesting thing, because Sam has always been considered the kind of he's kind of been considered the more morally dubious of the two, and the less kind of emotionally intuitive. Because Dean, you start off thinking, Dean, he's kind of boorish, and he thinks with his penis, and and Sam is the kind of sensitive one, and actually you realize, and again, it's one of the things that the show again does really well in some ways, is they really subvert that. You actually realize that Dean is very vulnerable and very sensitive and very easily hurt, whereas Sam is the better hunter. Sam is ultimately the more ruthless, and he takes it for granted that when Dean says, don't come looking for me, move on with your life, Sam takes it for granted that Dean means that this time. And you know that if it had been reversed, the situation, Dean would have just said, well, of course Sam doesn't mean that. Of course Sam wants me to come looking for him. But Dean wasn't able to make that leap intuitively. And I think that is an interesting thing about his character, and an interesting difference. And you really get the sense that that is something that Dean finds unsettling about Sam.
Yeah.
But they do really love each other.
They do. The brotherly love between them is written very well. And I think the underlying issues they have, particularly with the arc of Sam drinking demon's blood, where he's torn between Dean is torn between, were you anyone else, I would kill you, and you're my brother, I'm supposed to be protecting you. And Dean has this, I think he has this underlying feeling of duty towards his family when his father goes missing, which is the first season.
Yeah, that's the first.
Feels like he has to. He and Sam have the responsibilities to go find their father,
and they have the responsibility to protect each other, and all that Dean feels rests on his shoulders.
Yes, and I think he feels it more so than Sam does.
Yeah, I think so. I think Sam is, again, it's something about Sam's character. He's much more practical. He thinks much less emotionally than Dean does. But what were you going to say?
Oh, I was just agreeing with you.
That's always good. I always like that. Keep it up. But I mean, I do also think that one real fault that Dean has is I think he can be too black and white. I mean, again, this was something else that was so interesting, like you say, with the story where basically Sam is drinking demon blood in order to gain power. And the upside of this is that he is able to exorcise demons from ordinary human beings without killing the person. He exorcises the demon, and the person is then, the person then lives. The downside is that it has an effect on Sam. It has an effect on his soul. He starts to kind of lose his humanity. He starts to become more ruthless. He starts to make, the wrong choices more and more, and be less, his judgment is impaired. And but he saves a lot of people. And for Dean, it is as black and white as, you're drinking demon blood, that's not normal, you're a bad guy. He can't open his mind to the possibility that there are real kind of definitive and significant upsides to this. And you see that a lot with Dean's character. He is just like demon bad, kill demon. And Sam, in that way, Sam is much more complex. Sam is much more open-minded. And I think it's because he knows what it's like to tread that line. Dean is angelic. Dean is he's kind of a saint, and Sam is much more dubious, and therefore I think much more empathetic with the kind of motivations of demons.
Yeah.
Would you say that's a fair summation?
Yeah, it also just occurred to me, I'm sure this was their, I think this was more than likely deliberate, in the plot line with the Dean supposed to be being a vessel for Michael, and then Sam's supposed to be for Lucifer. There are a lot of distinct similarities between Dean and the angels and Sam and the demons, though more so I think with the angels, because they do have the mindset of what I'm doing is right, therefore anything that strays from what I'm doing is automatically wrong and should be stopped. The very close-minded I'm right, you're wrong, which is very ingrained in Dean's character pretty much from the get-go. And Sam is more, though not all the way I do whatever I want because I'm a demon, he's more black, more in the gray area of what's right versus what's wrong.
Yeah, I think Sam, I don't think he has an inherent belief of there are certain things that are just wrong and there are certain things that are just right. I think he takes everything on its own individual merits, and he thinks about things in a much more practical, much less an emotional way, whereas Dean is much more, and it's interesting because actually Dean is very similar to the angels, and actually the angels can be quite dangerous because they don't let anything get in the way of what they believe they know to be the right thing. And so there is as much an element of danger actually with Dean's character as there is with Sam's. There's as much an element of, could he eventually become so black and white in his thinking that his judgment is impaired? And again, I mean, it's really something that it hasn't been explored yet with Dean's character, but I hope it is.
Again, all I can really say is I agree with you.
Oh, that's good. Again, I don't argue with being agreed with. Oh God, well, sorry, what were you going to say?
I was just saying that I think, I don't know if they planned the whole angels versus demon out that far, but if they did a really good job of setting it up so that the similarities between, each side, Sam with Lucifer and Dean with Michael, they were already there. So it's not just like, oh, well, we're just going to change the character. It works really well. And I was actually when I first watched this, I was watching it, I didn't get into Supernatural until like last year, and I was watching it on Netflix, and when they started bringing out the angels, I was like, oh God, this is going to turn into what every other film and show seems to portray angels as perfect and entirely good, and then they came out and they're kind of, as Dean I think has said, they're kind of dicks.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the thing is that you're right, the seeds were already sown within those characters, and it is a really it's a really, really intelligent kind of path to go down, because there are so many science fiction and fantasy shows that for 9 seasons would have just been monster of the week, monster of the week, monster of the week. So to be brave enough to, to be brave enough to, go for something, as big and sweeping and epic as that, and 2, to tackle religion, I think is really brave. I absolutely think trying to tackle religion is brave. I really take my hat off to them and tackling it in a way that doesn't feel preachy, and it genuinely just seems to ask the questions that we all ask, and it doesn't seem to want to give us answers, and it doesn't pretend it knows those answers, but it asks questions about good and evil, and it takes religious figures that we've kind of grown up with and become accustomed to, and it subverts them and plays with them. And I think for an American show, for a big mainstream American sci-fi show, that is brave as hell.
I agree. Particularly with the way that they portrayed God, is just kind of distinctly similar to like the absent father figure, which is some way similar to Sam and Dean's father, in that he was so obsessed with finding at the time they didn't know what it was, but the demon that killed the demon that killed their mother, that he just kind of stops being a father, and he's like more of a drill sergeant.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then in the show, the God is just kind of not there. They don't know where he is, though. I think at some point, they didn't say it in show, but I believe outside the show they said that the writer of the books in the show was supposed to be God, which is, I think, interesting.
It is. I mean, I was under the impression that he was a prophet.
Yeah, they did say that he was a prophet, but then at the end of that season, he just kind of disappears.
Oh, Oh, that's really interesting. That had never kind of... again, for those of you that don't know, there's a character, Chuck, who you find out he's a prophet because Sam and Dean discover that there are books called Supernatural that appear to be about them. And this character, this writer character, just instinctively knows all this stuff and is able to write their story. And yeah, at the end of season 5, he writes the end of the season, and you hear him narrating it, and then you never see him again. And there's this big storyline about where is God. We don't know. He's abandoned us, and there is definitely the seeds have been sown for that character to be God, and I think that would be really interesting.
Yeah.
But it never occurred to me until you just mentioned it.
I saw something, I don't remember who it was, it might have been Eric Kripke. It was on like a Supernatural wiki that it was basically, he asked the actor that played the writer, how did it feel to play God? So that's the only real indication that I had that character was supposed to be God as opposed to just a prophet.
Well, it might be something that they want to leave up to interpretation. And again,
Possibly.
it's something that I really like about the show. I mean, I think that's the thing as well. I think if there was going to be, if I had heard previously that they were going to go down the religious route with the show, I think, and have the characters be, kind of allegories for various religious figures, I would have dreaded that. I would have gone, oh God, no, it's gonna turn into a sermon. It's gonna turn into a Sunday school lesson. That's what's been going on all this time. I've been conned into watching something religious, which, I would always my natural inclination, not to kind of offend anyone, is to be cynical about such things.
So is mine. Yeah.
Yeah, well, absolutely. I think the majority of us probably feel the same way. Um, but again, I think, yeah, turning them into just real three-dimensional characters that can be flawed, and writing them. One really interesting thing is, and it goes back to a bit the absent father thing, is writing them as a family. They might have this immense power. They might, have this kind of divine right, but yeah, ultimately they're a family and they're trying to do the right thing, and there's bitterness and there are rivalries, and sometimes they fuck up and they betray each other, but underneath all that there is love. I think is a really, I think is a really interesting idea, and again, it kind of it mirrors the relationship that Sam, Dean, Castiel, their father Bobby, that they all
Yeah.
have. And that's a really clever idea, and it is really unique to that show. I can't think of a single other show that takes on ideas that, epic.
Mm. I don't.
I think religion on the show was on the list, wasn't it?
Um. Well, you could, not specifically, but you had the good guys and bad guys, so
Oh, okay. Well, yeah,
it works.
I think that covers it. I mean, what else have we got, Heather? What's next?
Uh, we have death, which I think we touched on mostly that in this show, death doesn't really seem to be a definite thing, unless, of course, you're a woman.
Yeah, if you're a woman, you're screwed.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, no, it's an interesting thing, and I mean, I think it's something that it could be construed as a problem, um,
Mm.
because if you don't have death as a if you don't have death as a threat, then what do you have? Where is the conflict?
Yeah.
And the answer to that question, I don't think I really know. I mean, I think I think there is conflict. I think you are afraid for the characters, but you're not afraid of them dying. I think the things that you fear for them are all kind of on Earth or in heaven or in hell. But the idea that they the idea that they will just stop
Yeah.
doesn't really seem to be,
I think,
it doesn't really seem to be an issue for them.
yeah. I think as far as Sam and Dean are concerned, them dying isn't really like an issue anymore because every
Mm.
time they've died, they've been brought back. But most of their family and friends, I think, have stayed dead, except for Castiel, which,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
could argue because he's an angel, you could use that as a little bit of making it not as big as a deal that he's come back a couple times. But for the most part, their family and friends that have died have stayed dead. And I think the idea that they keep coming back might be more painful. Like they come back and they have fewer and fewer people to connect with, which is why they're even more focused on keeping each other going.
I mean,
And
yeah, I think that's really interesting, and it had never occurred to me, but I think you're right. I think actually, I mean, it's like what I was saying before, the real tragedy is the fact that they have to go on, and it also is what keeps them separate from the rest of the world, because they do always have to be separate, Sam and Dean. No matter how many times they attempt normalcy in their lives, they're cursed with this kind of quest, this destiny that will keep pulling them back in, and will just go on and on and on. And yeah, I think they do have to be separate from the kind of respite of death that the rest of the world has. Once we're dead, we're dead.
yeah,
And it is in some ways a relief. And yeah, I think that is a really really interesting interpretation of it. And I think whether they bring them back authentically is up for debate. But I mean, I have to say, and I'm being completely honest here, and I'm very willing to criticize the show when I feel it's due. Um, I feel that the way that they bring them back is authentic. It doesn't bother me. It doesn't feel unnatural in the context of the show.
Yeah. It gives you a lot, particularly just the basis of the show. The idea of the supernatural gives you a lot more leg room with that sort of thing.
Absolutely. I mean, you still have to stay true to your own universe, but I think that they do.
Yeah, they do. Particularly, and I forget which season it is, but Sam and Dean die and go to heaven, and there's a reference to them having died several times, but they just don't remember being in heaven. And there's also as far as the tragedy of losing their friends, I think it's actually worse for them as far as not being able to stay dead, because when they do go to heaven and they do actually remember it this time, they run into like Ash and Pam, and they're very obviously happy in heaven.
Absolutely. I mean,
they have the whole everybody gets their own paradise thing, and it seems like, they're not going to, at least anytime soon, be able to get that relief of not constantly being hunting or trying to save the world from whatever. And
they're always going to be dragged back into that. Yeah, heaven is shown to be a relief. You're quite right. I mean, and it is that, and again, without it falling too much into cliche, it is that thing of, all your favorite people are there and you get to go to your favorite place, and it's that real childlike magical view of heaven. And I can really forgive them for going down that route, because that's what I mean, by its very definition, heaven is meant to be perfect. And I love the idea of that episode. I love that Sam and Dean get a taste of that and then are dragged back. Because like you say, it really does highlight their kind of ultimate tragedy. And it's funny, I do think, there is so much debate, are Sam and Dean going to die at the end? And actually, I think it's a real sort of subversion, because I think actually the way to end it most happily would be for them to die. And that is such a subversion of form. And Supernatural, I mean, despite how normative it is in some ways, that we've discussed, in some ways it's very, very interesting.
Yeah. I think the most interesting things are some of the things we've touched on, like Sam and Dean, how they think, and Sam's more gray and Dean's more black and white, and then the underlying morality of a lot of stuff that they do in show. Like a good example of the kind of bizarre hypocrisy of Dean is they have an episode, I think it was the 7th season, with the actress that played Kaylee in Firefly. Oh, she goes by Amy Pond. Yeah, that was cute. And
it was. I liked that.
Sam had met her as a child. Who I can't remember what monster she is.
No, I can't remember either. I'm going to look it up now. While you kind of carry on sort of synopsizing it. I'll quickly
basically
look it
up. Her mother is killing people, and Sam, Dean, and their father are hunting the mother. And Sam accidentally bumps into the daughter, not realizing who she is until later on, after they've gone back to the girl's house and we're spending some time together and relating on being basically the outcast. And Sam ends up killing her mother and letting her go, because Dean and his father don't know about her, as he didn't. So he lets her go, and eventually, years down the line, it appears that the same monster is killing again, and he figures out that it's her. But the reason she's killing is because she has her own son who is dying and needs I believe it's like they eat the pituitary gland or something like that, and
it's something very specific. She works in a morgue, I believe. So she's, from what I recall, so she's not she's not actually killing at first. She has no
Yeah.
intention of killing at first. It starts out as an accident. I'm
Mhm.
not entirely sure how. She's called a kitsune, by the way. I just looked
Oh,
up.
okay.
That's the
I
name of that particular monster.
I believe she was she only started killing because her son got sick and needed the fresh brain or pituitary gland, whatever it is, in order to keep him alive.
Yeah,
And
exactly,
upon
exactly.
discovering this, and because the kid is better, tells Sam that she's not going to kill anymore, and he decides to let her go because she had saved his life as a child. Oh wait, she killed her mother, not Sam,
Yeah, yeah,
in
that was
order
it.
to
Yeah, she
save
killed
Sam.
her mother to save Sam's life.
And Sam decides to let her go, and when Dean finds out, he tracks down the girl and ends up killing her anyway, even in front of her son.
Despite
And
telling Sam that he wouldn't do it.
yeah, so the morality that, basically he goes out and kills this woman, telling Sam that he's not going to, and in front of her son, presumably creating another monster in that he just watched his mother get murdered,
Hmm.
and is probably going to be 10 times more likely to go out and kill people now.
Yeah,
He
absolutely.
still has it in his head that he has to kill her because she's a monster.
Yeah, it's as simple as that for him. He has no concept of, she's a mother, she's been born into a situation that she has no control over. She doesn't want to kill people. She has no inclination to hurt. Um, she's a human being with an unfortunate affliction, and he kills her in cold blood. He does, not only does he kill her, he doesn't kill her kindly, um, and or kill her kindly. That's an odd turn of phrase, but I mean, and he allows he doesn't ensure that the son is protected in any way. He doesn't kill the son, but he leaves the son because,
Yeah.
as far as he is concerned, they're not human. They're not in any way human, um, and they don't deserve the equality or the respect that is afforded him. And
Yeah.
that is bizarre for someone that appears to have such a kind of fervent moral compass.
Yeah.
And I think it is actually it's the first time you start to get a sense that Dean is actually as morally grey as Sam is.
Yeah.
Oh, I
Particularly.
just read something. Greer, our usual co-host, just posted Kitsune is actually pronounced Kitsune because it's from Japanese folklore, which is interesting. I didn't know that, and I'd like to know how similar that character is to the Japanese folklore, because I know that another thing that Supernatural did before it delved into religious territory is that it it very much played on kind of fairy tale and folklore and took for and mythology. Very very few of the ideas were original. They were just taken from various bits of mythology and then expanded on and changed and done interesting things to. Grizz just said that she learns everything from anime. Yo, I liked the addition of yo there on the end, and I think I did it justice. I think that's just how an American woman would have said that sentence.
Yes, I think so.
Um, so what have we? I think we've talked about that sufficiently and come to some sort of interesting conclusions. Unless you have anything more to add on that subject, Heather.
No, I think we pretty well covered it.
I think we have. What have we got next?
We have Outside the Law.
Outside that, well, actually, that is, I think that is an interesting. I think that is an interesting topic. The idea, again, certainly for the first few seasons, that Sam and Dean do manage to live outside the law, and they do just take for granted that the rules don't apply to them. So yeah, again, for those of you that don't know the show, they commit credit card fraud. They steal, they lie about their identities. They've been anything from sort of FBI agents to park rangers, and they've escaped from prison. They've been America's Most Wanted. They've eluded the police, and And yeah, I mean, I remember when I wrote the list, I thought that was an interesting topic, but the more I think about it, I actually have no problem with them doing that. I kind of think the ends justify the means,
Oh yeah.
which is kind of, it's a bit of a controversial thing to say. But I do. I mean, I kind of, I think they don't hurt anyone and they get the job done and it's kind of badass and I'm okay with it.
I'm just kind of surprised that they don't, like, it's not an issue more often. They did have the underlying plot of, I believe it was an FBI agent that was determined to hunt them down and put them in
Yeah, they had
jail.
a great foil in the police.
Yeah,
I can't remember his name, but he was one of
I
my
can't remember.
favorite characters for the first few seasons.
Yeah,
He was killed off. Yeah, I can't remember his name for the life of me, but I loved that character, and it was that classic thing of, they had the cop that was kind of, he was desperate to catch them, and he was kind of, they were the mavericks and he was by the book, but they were all just trying to get the job done. And what was great about him was that you didn't dislike him, you really fervently, believed that he believed he was doing the right thing, but you did always want Sam and Dean to escape, and there was always so much satisfaction in them escaping. And it was
yeah,
something that, when I mean, I think actually one of the downsides to the religious stuff is that they did kind of abandon both the kind of mythology and the folklore and the sort of smaller storylines, the smaller
yeah,
scale storylines, and they abandoned all the kind of running from the law stuff, which was just, I mean, it was just really entertaining. It was always really
yeah.
entertaining to watch them figure out how to, pull a prison heist or, trick people into believing they were the FBI, and that was a big part of the show.
I'm here.
Yeah, I'm there. I'm there. We're good. We're good to keep going. Cool. I was gonna say actually, going back to female characters, a really, really good female character. Um, Actually, no, I can think of three. There seems to be, it's a bit of an anomaly in terms of the portrayal of women on the show,
Is
but
there?
women in the police force on the
Are there
show
either?
are always portrayed really well. So you have the character played by oh, what's the name of the actress that was in The Exorcist?
Oh God, I don't. Oh,
Linda Blair.
yeah.
Linda Blair plays a really, really great female policewoman
Either?
character in one of the episodes. I can't remember which season.
Alright, okay, go ahead.
They also have, it's an episode in season one. It's a great story. Sam is kidnapped by a kind of redneck family. They're very kind of Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and it's really sinister. They keep people in cages, and then they let them out in the woods and hunt them. And it's a really kind of inventive storyline, and they have a great female policewoman that Dean works with in that episode. Kind of a one-off companion in Doctor Who speak. And then they have the officer that falls in love with Bobby,
Yeah.
and she's
Sheriff.
brilliant.
Yeah.
Yeah, what's her name? Sheriff Mills.
Yes, I think so.
Yeah, and she's fantastic, and Ellen and Joe.
Yeah.
Ellen certainly. Although Joe I like too. I think she has an interesting relationship with Dean. They're a kind of mother-daughter hunting team that run a bar that hunters frequent. Um, and but yeah, I mean, I think all those characters are kind of, they're anomalies. They're the few exceptions. But
Yeah.
unfortunately, Ellen and Joe were killed. They were really good female characters, and they were killed.
Mm-hmm.
They were killed off at the same time in one fell swoop.
Yeah.
But those were the good female characters, and they did have some very, very good female policewomen. I would particularly suggest the season 1 episode, The Benders. Actually, that leads me to a subject that I'm not sure is on the list, but favourite episodes.
It's not, but, you always have to make time for your favorites.
Well, what would your favourite episode be, Heather?
Oh, God. I don't know that I have a specific favorite, but I think anything that's heavy in, like, Castiel not understanding how humans work is always hilarious.
Oh, any joke about Cass missing the point or not understanding a joke is instantly funny. And things like hearing him on voicemail or trying to understand cartoons and completely reading too much into them. I think my favourite episode is actually it's a really, really early one. Also, it's certainly my favourite early episode. Is one where Sam one of the things that they do on the show is they'll have a kind of prologue at the beginning that will be from it'll be a scene from the middle of the episode, and then you'll kind of go back and find out how they got there. It's quite a kind of common theme on the show, and they have Sam calling Dean after having been missing for about a week. I think, feeling like he's had some kind of, sort of out of body experience and killed someone, and you see then that he has blood on him. And this is a huge spoiler, but for the entirety of the episode, from the phone call, Sam has been possessed. None of that has been Sam. And there's a great scene with the Jo character, who is Ellen's daughter, the daughter of the woman who, is a hunter and runs the bar, who has always been in love with Dean. And Sam confronts her at the bar while possessed and taunts her in such a kind of cruel, such a sort of sinister way. I mean, it's a really horrible, nasty episode. It's got great dialogue, fantastic acting from Jared Padalecki. And then the episode after that is The Trickster, which is perfect. And I remember seeing those 2 episodes, and that for me, they're season 2, I believe, and those episodes for me are when I was on the supernatural train.
I like the episodes with the trickster, particularly the one where they realize he's Gabriel.
Yes. Well, what's
with all
great
the other gods in it.
Sorry?
The episode with all the other gods from different religions in it, like they had Odin.
Yeah. I was thinking
really
of the
cool.
one where it's set in all the different TV shows, but where that is a brilliant episode. That episode has Dr. Sexy.
Oh yeah, that was hilarious.
Which is great. But no, the episode where it's a kind of conference, isn't it? It's in a hotel of various different kind of angels, demons, gods. Yeah, it's gods, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's gods specifically.
I believe that I know they had Odin and Kali and I can't remember the others. There's one that's I believe from I think like I don't want to say voodoo, but it from that.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Various different kind of, again, different mythology, different religion, pardon me. And yeah, Gabriel is there. And yeah, it's revealed that the trickster has been Gabriel all along, and that's a great twist.
Yeah.
And again,
the other gods knew him as Loki too. I thought that was funny.
Oh yeah. Oh, I completely forgot about that, and that makes complete kind of sense.
Yeah.
And yeah, again, it's just really brilliantly subverting what you already know about those gods. What you've grown up hearing about them, and how they then those characteristics manifest themselves in their personalities. And it's really, really witty and inventive, and yeah, and I love that character. I just love that character. I was really sad when they didn't bring him back.
Yeah.
Heather, I'm just going to briefly go to the bathroom. I'm having really, really bad stomach aches all day. I'll be back in like 2 seconds.
Yep.
Hi guys, sorry about that. I've been getting these really weird like stomach cramps. I think it's because of this new skirt that I bought that was too tight. Anywho, we've done favourite episodes. What's next?
I was just gonna say that I just realized any episode with death is really good.
Oh my god, that is a brilliant performance, isn't it? I mean,
I know.
It's one thing that I really like about Supernatural is that one of the many, 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 many things that I really like is that they always cast really great British actors. We like, and so many that are complete kind of unknowns. And there's no real reason for them to do it because often they're cast as kind of demons and angels and therefore don't have a kind of nationality. But I like the fact that they recognise that death is probably going to have to be played by a British actor. It's just going to give it more gravitas.
Yeah.
No offense to the Americans out there. But, I mean, it just, I just think that actor is fucking brilliant. And I'm so excited he's back for the next season.
I don't know if it's the performance, the way he's written, but there's something that really reminds me of Neil Gaiman in the way that he's portrayed. And I can't put my finger on it, but I think that's why I like it so much. He's just so... I don't know. I can't explain it. It feels very Gaiman to me, and just the performance and the writing are brilliant for that character.
They really are, and it's so. Yeah, again, it's not too because I would never want anyone to go from what I've said about the actor being British, thinking that it's kind of tremendously over the top. You know, quite the opposite. I mean, the writing and the performance are both very subtle. You know, very kind of dark, very. You know, sort of very wise, but with an underlying darkness and a real kind of world wariness. And yeah, I know exactly what you mean. I mean, I think the part could have been played by Neil Gaiman. I mean, I think,
Yeah.
you know, there's a real kind of wiry, grey, you know, he just looks slightly out of time and out of place and almost like a fairy tale character. And I think
Yeah.
Neil Gaiman does look like a fairy tale character. I think if you saw him illustrated in a Grimm's fairy tale, he would not look out of place.
No, not really.
Um,
Which
and
is
like,
why I love him so much, probably.
yeah, no, totally. I'm right there with, and I love that he's with Amanda Palmer. That's so
Oh,
freaking.
yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think one of the great things about the show as well is that it does just have a fantastic supporting cast. I mean, Mark Sheppard as Crowley
Yeah.
is just and so you can tell he just loves playing that part because it's so. He really chews the scenery, but in a completely forgivable way. It's so over the top. But he's a great actor as well when he needs to bring it,
Yeah.
like in the season 8 finale, which is one of the best finales I've ever seen, by the way. He brings it. And Balthazar, I love Death, of course, we talked about. And I think that brings us quite neatly into a subject that we've kind of been, I guess, saving for last a bit, is Castiel.
Oh, yeah.
Who we've sort of touched upon, but is one of the most interesting characters on the show and one of the most beloved. So do you want to briefly synopsize who Castiel is, Heather?
Sure. Castiel would be it's introduced as a very stern character, like absolutely really doesn't show any emotion. He's initially he's the character or the angel that raised Dean from hell at the end of, I can't remember which season. I think it's season 3. It's the one where Dean goes to hell.
Yeah, that's at the end of season 3. He goes to hell.
Yeah. So Castiel is initially just kind of very much like a blank. You can't read him at all. Apart from he's very determined that he has to do what he thinks is God's will, which is basically just what the higher up, the archangels, are telling him he's supposed to be doing. And progressively through the series, he starts to question his blind loyalty to the other angels, which I think is also, it's a good parallel between Dean, because he had that habit of just blindly following whatever his father said without question. And probably why the characters are so close is that they have that underlying very strong character trait that they both share. And progressively, Castiel is more like,
hello?
I'd say laid back, I guess. He becomes close.
Hello?
Aren't humans weird type of thing. His attempt to grasp.
Heather, I lost you from progressively.
Oh, well.
Okay, so do you want to start that whole bit again? Is that all right?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, I got the majority of it.
Okay. I think Castiel has become progressively more human, but he still has this otherworldly, I don't understand how or why things work in the way that they do. And he's become closer and closer to Dean over the passing seasons, and he's become really like as main a character as Sam and Dean at this point, I think.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think, you know, it's one of those things that whether it was intended or not, I don't know, but the character, something about the character just, you know, just hit. It was just the right time and the right actor, you know, it was the writing, it was like the stars aligned, and people just completely fell in love with him and fell in love with his relationship with Dean. And so the interesting thing about Castiel is that there is this kind of, you know, there are the interesting parallels between him and Dean, their relationships with their fathers, that underlying understanding they have of each other, and yet how different they are. And there's a tremendous amount of humor in the character as well, and I think, that is something that audiences have really, really warmed to, because the stars really did align with Castiel. I don't know whether they were intending to make him a main character, but he just instantly, the audience just completely took him into their hearts. But so many of the best jokes on the show are Castiel related. I I love any time he just kind of misses the point, because he only he only knows what he kind of needs to know, and he's never needed to know before what makes people tick, and that is instantly funny that he now has to learn that stuff. He's like a child.
Yeah, pretty much. I think there's actually a line in one of the episodes where Castiel loses his powers and Dean calls him a baby in a trench coat.
Yeah. And then Sam says, "I think you hurt his feelings." It's sad how we know the show. But I think there is also, one of the other reasons why he's so popular is that people love the idea of him and Dean falling in love, and I don't think, we touched upon it earlier, I don't think that is without merit. I think there is a lot in their relationship to suggest that they are, what they have goes deeper than friendship. And it isn't a brotherly thing. It's something that they have this understanding. It's hard. I think it was described as a profound bond, and it's hard to explain because they are so different, and you couldn't write those two characters, or you couldn't write a description of those two characters and look at them and say they are going to have a profound connection, because Dean is so kind of boorish and manly and sensitive and emotional, and he can be so childish, and he is so human, and Cass is so otherworldly and so kind of stern and takes himself so seriously. But they have, for whatever reason, they have this profound connection, and there's a real connection between the two actors. And he's just a great character, and I think, again, he has a dubious moral compass like Sam and Dean. He has his own motivations. He has his own reasons for doing things. And, there are times when, like the two brothers, he has really betrayed them. He's let them down in some significant way, and you really believe that there might not be any coming back from that. So that creates a real kind of conflict. So he's assimilated brilliantly into the show. It feels like he's always been there. Yeah,
it's hard to think of the show without him at this point.
It really is, isn't it? I mean, it's why you really felt the loss of him in season 7.
Yeah.
You really, when he was possessed by the Leviathan, you really, really felt that. You felt that loss. But I mean, he is one of many great supporting characters. I mean, for instance, Bobby.
I think it's Bobby.
I adore Bobby. I want Bobby to be my dad. I want him to be my uncle. I want him to be my best friend. I mean, Bobby is possibly my favorite character. I think it's one of those things. It's a bit like, you ask someone who's a Twin Peaks fan, who's your favorite character, and someone who really, really likes Twin Peaks will say, oh, Agent Cooper, obviously. But you are someone that loves Twin Peaks and really knows the show and knows the motivations of the ensemble cast and the various other characters, and they might say someone that you wouldn't necessarily expect. So, for me, there are other characters that do kind of sneak in there. And Bobby is one of them. I absolutely love Bobby. I love the way they subvert him kind of being, a sort of macho kind of quote unquote redneck kind of guy. And, they reveal him to be really intelligent and really, kind of funny and witty and a proper father figure to the boys, in some ways much more so than their real father.
Oh yeah.
I mean, but yeah, Bobby would certainly be in there. I mean, who would he be your favorite character? Who would yours be?
I'd say Bobby is definitely one of my favorite characters. I can't really pick one, but it's kind of like a tie between Bobby and Dean and Castiel, and probably Crowley's in there too.
Yeah, Crowley would sneak in. Crowley would,
Yeah.
I love Mark Sheppard's performance.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I think that leads us to probably the only place we can really go, and that's hopes for season 9.
Yeah. Which I think my biggest hope for season 9 is getting Bobby back permanently.
Yeah,
I
getting
was
Bobby back
devastated
permanently.
when they killed Bobby.
I that is one of my favorite episodes, actually. I think that is heartbreaking. I mean,
Oh
I can
yeah.
remember the Red Wedding episode of Game of Thrones coming out at the same time, and I don't watch Thrones, although I should. But everyone was going nuts on Facebook about that, and I had no one to lean on during my Bobby death period.
Yeah.
I wish I'd known what a fan of Supernatural you were at the time, because I would have had you.
There you go.
You would have been a
I
tremendous
was
comfort to me at that horrible, horrible period in my life. But yeah, to bring Bobby back permanently, I mean, the trailer is really exciting because you've
yeah.
got some great characters in there. You've got loads of Crowley, you've got a bit of Bobby, you've got Cass. So I mean, my hope really for season 9 is for them, not only to carry on doing things with the stories that are, different and inventive and funny, to have that great mixture of one-off and, overarching themes. And if they can do that and have a much greater presence of Castiel, of Bobby, and write some more interesting female characters, I mean, continue to explore Charlie's character, and, to kind of take her to different places and to create some really interesting other female characters, maybe some more angels, some more demons, I will be very, very satisfied. And to start to wrap the show up, to start to give the show a direction to go in where you could, I mean, as tragic as that is, I think it is inevitable that the show is going to be wrapping up in the next couple of seasons. So I want to see I want to see what direction they go with that. And I really like the development of the Men of Letters and them having a home. So more an establishment of that and what they might do when their story ends.
Yeah.
I would like to see flashes of that in season 9.
I think that pretty much sums up everything that I could hope for. I really would love to see some good female characters in there. And you're right, it at this point, it's been 9 seasons. They really should at least kind of hint towards where they would go for the end of the show, because I don't think it's going to last more than maybe 1 or 2 more seasons, as much as I would hate that.
Yeah, I mean, I will be devastated when the show ends, but I think if they could give it a great season 9, a great season 10, and go out on a high, I would be very, very fucking happy with that. 10 great seasons is more than enough to ask for. And I think with that, we are going to wrap up. So thank you so much for whoever joined us for this. I know Heather never gets tired of talking about Supernatural. I don't either. And hopefully you enjoyed listening to us wax lyrical about the show, go into the ins and outs of it in greater detail. And yeah, leave us your thoughts in the comments.
Yep, thank you.
Cheers. Thank you very much.